well lead. And so these conversations are a way of deepening our leadership capacity. So I want to ask, we are currently going through some form of change in the form of the pandemic, and this is global. The impact has hit everybody in significant ways. We've had to alter the way we work, we've had to alter the way we engage, even on a personal level and stuff, and businesses. And I know, Rob, North America, your neighbors down south, we know what's going on with them. Here in Nigeria, we seem to have moved into a mode where COVID is there, but it's not necessarily a defining factor for a lot of people. But then the hard stop that we had has affected businesses, has affected a lot of leaders in different ways and organizations in different ways. So I'm going to ask you first, Maureen, you work here, you work with organizations here, and you're looking at how can we help to rebuild back? How do we lead in such a situation where, yes, it's no longer something that's as scary as it was in March. We are probably getting back to some sense of normal, but we also know that because our Northern Hemisphere folks are looking at a second round, what will be the impact? These are uncertainties that leaders have to deal with. So what skills, okay, are you deploying in either personal leadership, in your engagement with your clients, businesses? How are leaders dealing with the new normal? How do we optimize our self-leadership in this scenario that we found ourselves? How is that working for you? Maureen, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Akin. That's a really good question. I mean, to start with, when this came, there was the general thing of going into some kind of shock or denial at first, thinking it will never come to us, right? So we're thinking, well, it's far away, just like the SARS, just like Ebola, we will never get to this. But interestingly, I had to shut down 2 weeks before the general shutdown or lockdown in Nigeria, because I made a decision to bring my daughter back home. Of course, that also affected my business because I also had to shut down the office and say, okay, let's work remotely. And in doing that, I knew that there would be some difficulties. My people who had said, okay, let's work remotely, couldn't immediately understand why I was saying that. Everybody else was, going about their business. But in that space, I was thinking, if the modeling that is going around is going to be real, I'm going to be putting people at risk coming into work from their homes. And also, by the rest of themselves at risk as well, and their families back home. So in that case, you're deploying three things. You're thinking about them, being genuinely worrying about them, being empathic about it. And then on the other hand, also trying to understand what is happening. So taking in a lot of information, reading stuff, observing, listening, and in that moment, trying to construct your own context in order for you to have a kind of narrative that you can share with them and let them understand. And then again, I had to take another decision, which was a big one when they did the lockdown, that, business is slow. I cannot afford to carry on all the expenses. Yes, we have to pay the rent, so the office, this would eventually go away, hopefully. But your families too have to feed, and you don't have alternate sources of income. And then for the first time, the word furlough came up on my radar. And it's not something that is known here as such. I was on an HR platform and I asked the question, and no one could quite tell me, what to do, what kind of options were available at the time. But then I had also started, as I said, I was reading up, I was following up things, and on other global platforms, I was realizing that of the people who were much more established were putting their people on furlough. Some were working 2 days a week, some had already started working from home. And I said, listen, you guys, I won't furlough you, but I'll put you on part payment because at least you don't have the transportation expense anymore on you, but I can afford to make sure you have food on your table. So given that generous part, so there are 3 G's in this whole aspect of principle of leadership. And one is being genuine. I didn't know enough on how to take the business on. The second was being generous. And then the third was being generative. And then I started talking to my staff. I said, okay, let's think about what we can do remotely, how we can still stay in touch. And because leadership for me has got to be relational, and it also has to have some form of intuition as well. So we started learning. I picked up some courses and I said to her, learn how to do these things. So we're doing our own flyers in-house. And then I started going on platforms. Some were free. I started giving out some myself, free classes as well, and learned as much as I could in that moment. So, and then I reached out to my clients and started offering some of these things. They were not all taken up at the same time, not all of them took, but one thing I did was to be consistent, to make sure that I kept going and coming with them. I kept the engagements going, to make sure that business, would speak up whenever I did. And when I saw things that I thought were useful for them, I would share with them. So the main thing I did was to actually also step back, introspect, and look at myself and where I was, and genuinely pick out the kind of actions that I needed to take in order to stay on course and still come out strong with this.